Welcome to Ambassadors Recovery Radio. I'm your host, Anthony Delatorre.
And I am your co host, Desiree Villalpando. And today we are going to talk about a topic that was actually requested from some of our current participants and alumni. Again, Ambassadors of Recovery Radio is an alumni group from our treatment courts. Treatment courts try to be a model for criminal justice reform. So this level of probation might look a little bit different than other levels of probation because we are specialty drug court.
Yes, totally different picture from regular probation. Today's episode, we're going to focus on relationships, right? That's what they wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so we got some feedback from some of our current participants who are currently going through probation in our treatment court, current participants, and then other alumni. And the feedback we got when asking, what they would like us to discuss on the podcast, what topics, they all mentioned relationships in early recovery.
So in preparation for today's episode, I actually looked up some stuff. I think I sent it over to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely reminded me about some really cool experiments that were done. I think one of them is I'm going to make sure to put a link below for the person that I saw a TED Talk on and the rat park experiment. If you're not familiar with the rat park experiment, basically they give these rats a choice between heroin water and water, right? And
or it's like crack cocaine or something.
Yeah. And basically what isolated, they just used it until they OD'd, And
okay, so they put rats or mice in a cage by themselves with only water that contained like cocaine or crack cocaine with a drug, an illicit substance, with nothing else to do, just them and the drug water. And that's it.
So imagine like a cage, like racked, full of cages, whatever, and they're all alone by themselves, and they have these two choices. So what's ended up happening?
What's the other choice?
Water, just water.
Just water or the
laced. The one I saw was they're actually this person whatever actually had them IV hooked up to heroin. That's in the
No way.
Yes.
I don't remember that part.
Well, so the rats ended up basically using it until they OD'd, and so somebody that was smart looked at this experiment and said, well, let's take a broader picture of it and let's figure something out, right? The commonalities between rats being social and humans being social. They went ahead and made a rat park. This guy did, right? So
like Rat Utopia.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like half the size of his garage. Again, please watch the thing. It describes a whole lot better detail.
The experiment.
So
it's on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put the link in there so they can see. So it's the guy's half of his garage, and so in this huge rat park, they have wheels, they have food, and they're in there with a community of other rats, right? And so they still have that option to use either the water or the narcotic laced water, right?
So this is now a new testing group.
Yeah.
They still have the drug in their cage,
right.
But they also have access to this amusement park utopia part of their cage.
Right.
Okay.
And what they found is that the rats that were in this community were actually not using the drug laced water because they had that support system. There's actually proof in this where they legalized all drugs in Portugal. Right? And so they actually showed across the board addiction, ODs, HIV contraction, dramatically.
Once they legalized all the drugs.
Right.
Yes.
And not just that, but because they also focus on the supportive aspect of it.
Right, and the community.
Yes.
This whole experiment is about community.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so they found in this TED Talk, this guy's talking about how when you have relationships that are important, family, loved ones, community, you step up for them, right? People need connection, right?
Yes.
So I really like that. I really that whole thought of it. So I looked at it, I sent it to you. I was like, some really good stuff in there. I really feel like we could definitely learn from it, and I really feel like it's something that can change the mold on what we think about addiction. A lot of people really kind of, in America, they need to be in jail. They get out, they have these charges, and they're basically barraged with you're an addict.
The stigma.
Yes.
And we were talking about this in the last episode, how my pet peeve is the stigma with addicts.
Yes.
I make sure to change the language. I don't call my probationers defendants or offenders. I call them participants and people who suffer from substance use disorder.
Yes.
Because this stigma is so important to me, it really does make a big difference. But it does really affect how they're treated in the community?
Well, language is very powerful, right?
Yes.
You know, I think in any sense, you know, we're hoping that, you know, people are starting to be a little bit more about language. But yeah, when you call someone an addict, it has a negative connotation, right? And anybody that is suffering with addiction, I'm sure you've walked in those shoes of having that judgment on you, right? And trying to get your life together. And so the whole idea behind this was, instead of bearing down on someone and continuing to rate them with, like, you know, you need to do this, you do this, you're not ever going to have this. Why don't we offer them the support they need?
Right.
Yeah.
Support.
Yes.
So, just piggybacking off of, you know, this whole experiment and you really bringing attention to community and support. As a treatment court, what we're trained to actually really help our participants with is that community and those natural supports, which is one of the reasons for the drug court, treatment court, alumni, ambassadors of recovery. Because what really, as probation officers, as a drug court, treatment court team, when people come off probation, especially in a treatment court, because they're drug testing all the time, they're required to participate and complete so many treatment programs, work, go to school, pay their fines and fees, pay their bills. Like, we have them do so much. So for them to come off probation, we should be ensuring that they have these natural supports, a community, even if it's not alumni, they're involved in, you know, a support group of their choice, an AA, the fellowship. So one of the biggest, I would say one of the most common feedbacks that we get from participants that are about to graduate, because you know how you completed one of those exit interview packets, graduation packets. Well, I keep those packets in my happy file. I have a little happy file. But the biggest feedback that we get from participants like yourself that have graduated and completed the drug court program is if they're successful, they successfully complete their probation, graduate the program. They always, the most common thing they always say was the thing that helped them the most was the positive support. Whether it's from family, friends, treatment, clinical team, or treatment team.
So I got to shout out a buddy of mine and a coworker, Jeremy. He was really worried about reentry, and he was saying, you know, a lot of times people come in, and I've seen it a million times. You know, they get out of jail, you go to prison, wherever, you don't have that support. Right? And so a big theme is that he brought up is, what if we give them that support? Another thing I'd like to talk about in today's episode is loving from a distance, right, for family members.
What does that mean?
So loving from a distance is, I can give you a good example. When I was, I would say right after my father passed away, I was in the height of my addiction. My mom, she was just, I mean, I probably made her go crazy with being her son and trying to be supportive to me. And she basically just broke down and asked me, like, what can I do for you? Like, well, what? And I told her, I was like, I just need you to support me. I don't want you to give me money. I don't want you to do this, do that. I know that I'm bringing this family down. You know, I just, you know, support me. And what that means is like, and they give a good example in that talk is that if you're alone and you're feeling like giving up, call me. I'll give you that assurance. I'll let you know I love you. You know, but loving from a distance understands that you're walking this line where you're not enabling. Right? Because at the end of the day, and my mom walked it pretty well, but she also for sure did the enable thing. Love you, Mom. Thank you for sticking through it with me. But yeah, the supportive aspect of it, you know. So loving from a distance is something that in my job I focus on a lot when I'm having one-on-one discussions with family members. And you know, you can hear the pain in their voice. You know, they're like, I don't know what to do. You know, I don't want them to die on the streets. You know, that this is just taking the life out of them. They're not the person that they used to be. You know, and I you know, empathize with them, and I try to use motivational interviewing, and I try to explain to them stages of change. But I also emphasize they have to want to do this in the stages of change, right? You can want it for them all you want. So loving from a distance, understanding like you're going to be supportive towards them, but you got to walk that line, making sure you're not enabling.
Awesome. Right? So it's interesting that you brought this article to my attention, and it talks about this idea of loving from a distance, because I didn't know there was an actual name to it. Because I had been practicing it for so long with my mom. So right before she passed away from ovarian cancer, she was actually using heroin and meth while she was going through her chemo treatment. And for the first time in her addiction, she was actually honest about her use. Her entire life, she and I always knew when she was high, what she was high on. But she was finally, like, her last chemo treatment, she actually overdosed.
Yeah.
That was the first time she called me, and she's like, I just want you to know before anyone else tells you, I overdosed during my chemo treatment. And I told her, well, I already knew you were using, but
Yeah.
that's a big, like, milestone for you to actually be honest.
Having that insight.
That what that allowed, and I also explained this to my participants, especially their family.
Right.
You know, if they still have family in their corner. So I moved away from New Mexico. I didn't have any family here in Arizona, and my mom's honesty, it really allowed me to love from a distance, right? Because I wasn't able to, she never asked for any money, but I was never able to give her money or send her money or really enable her anything to the point where it would be considered enabling.
Right.
But we got closer than we had ever been in her entire disease.
Right.
And so I was able to, like, you know, remind her and let her know about things that I had never been able to, like, tell her before. So loving from a distance was like I was there, you know, for her, answering calls and texts, but I wasn't there physically to see what she's going through in her active use. Her boyfriend was with her and, you know, told me about it later on. But I was able to, like, tell her, you know, how much I loved her, how amazing she was. And she was even gonna, like, write her story for me and gave me permission to always share, you know,
that's
her
amazing.
story.
Right.
Yeah, so, like, I learned that from that last year with my mom. Like really just, like, even though she died and she wasn't able to get better, I think, like, her love and her legacy and how close we got after she died really speaks volumes. So I still really like to teach and guide my participants and their family, like, okay, so, you know, maybe while they're in jail, you know, maybe not, like, always, like, you know, put money on their books and stuff because they barter and then, you know, they do all kinds of stuff in jail. But you still be there, be that support, so they know they're not alone. Encourage them, be that, like, you know, that, like, strong, strong, stable, like, support that they need. So they know they're not alone, but that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
I definitely want to dive a little bit deeper on what you were sharing, because I saw a lot of similarities in exactly what I went through in my own story, and I'm sure that people are watching are going to say they saw the same thing. You got to imagine when someone's going through, like your mom, whatever, you know, like my mom, she knew what was going on, right? We didn't ever put a name on it. It was the pink elephant in the room, but she knew what it was, right? Yeah. And so it stinks because you just, as that grows, you build this, as a person that was using, you build this shame, right? And so at the same time, I was, you know, trying to be a good brother, and I was like a father to my little sister, and, you know, I mean, oh man, it chokes me up when I think about her. But she would, she's amazing. And, you know, she would, you know, I always remember her when she was younger, whenever she saw me come through the door, she'd be super excited. She'd be like, Anthony. And so I'd be out in the streets and I would imagine that. And I would just like, oh my God, I'm such a piece of shit, you know? But that's what happens is you build that and it continues to grow. And before you know it, it's like you're just so ashamed of it, you don't want to say anything to anybody.
And that's the guilt that it's the driver to your addiction,
But once you reach that barrier where you can have that honesty, you even saw it, like I felt it in your story. As soon as that was reached, or whatever, there's understanding where it's like, okay, well, she's not leaving me. She knows who I am. She's not judging me. And I think that's really hard for a lot of us, especially like probably in your position, you know, with parents, right? Your parents are like gods to you, right? But it's understanding like they have their own struggles. They're only human as well, you know. And so that's a key relationship. I think that a lot of people could really benefit from. Not everybody has family, you know.
Right. Well, a lot of our participants coming into drug court, most of them are homeless, have lost their children, and don't have family support. So a lot of the time I let them know, you know, well, now drug court is going to be your new support and your new, like, positive, sober support for right now.
So I wanted to read the fight. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
How much time do we have?
I don't know. What time is it right now?
It's been going for 20 minutes.
Okay, we have 10 more minutes.
Okay, the last one is okay. So I was going over this 5 reasons to hold off dating in early recovery. I'm going to segue over to relationships, romantic relationships. Okay. Right. So this first one is dating distracts you from your main goal of discovering and defining your sober self. 2, dating can contribute to a risk of relapse and early sobriety. 3, dating can be a way to repurpose addictive behaviors by becoming consumed with a new person instead of a drug. 4, dating comes with rejection, which can bring on intense feelings of depression, anxiety, and loneliness. 5, dating someone who you knew before treatment can keep you tied to past behaviors and substance use. So I wanted to bring that up because I'm sure you probably have participants that when you're alone, right? And so what sticks is you're trying to grow and learn who you are. But I always like to tell people one of the biggest aha moments I had was my sponsor said, like, right now you're a dead battery, right? 2 dead batteries aren't going to start up anything,
Right. Okay, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then my therapist would say, like, why settle for anything? You deserve nothing but the best. Like, if you're going to put the work in, make sure that they're putting the work in.
Right.
And I really feel like a lot of people, especially when you're in addiction, you don't realize, like, you're just going through the motions. You're numb, right? So you kind of guard yourself and you build this barrier up where you're not going to allow anybody in. And then, now you're going to uncharted territory, right? You don't even really know how to be a functional person in regular society. So now you're trying to walk the line on dealing with relationships and work relationships, personal relationships, friendships, family relationships. And then you add this other equation in where in any successful relationship, I'm sure you'll agree, you have to be vulnerable, right? You have to be vulnerable, you have to have trust. But those are the 2 things that addicted people kind of are suffering with and struggling with, especially early in recovery.
Right.
So I tell people, especially that I deal with in behavioral health, like, hey, I get it. I tried having a relationship with someone early in recovery, but I will say that the only time I actually got triggered was when that relationship didn't work.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had to put work into it.
So relationships are a big deal, especially from like my perspective. I've been supervising primarily women in our treatment court for about 7 years. I was, doing a gender specific caseload. And so relationships are a big deal just because of, the codependency and the
Right.
abuse that goes on. And obviously from probation standpoint, that's always like, it's always very hard because per their conditions, they have to get everyone approved
Yeah.
in writing by their probation officer, especially in treatment court. Like, I'm really big on, who they can associate with, and they need to get it approved by me
Yeah.
if they're outside of a therapeutic setting, like inpatient or outpatient.
Right.
Just because there's been some very tragic, even deaths that
Right.
I've experienced because of relationships, and then screening for drug court and going throughout their history and seeing how and when their addiction progressed from, like, marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, and then progressing to more hardcore drugs. It was always because of relationships. And
Right.
then they had a year or a few years of sobriety, and then they got in another relationship, and then they broke up, and then they relapsed. So it's always relationships,
It turns
right?
into a cycle.
And if relationships have been one of the hardest lessons for me, I cannot imagine what a big trigger relationships are for anyone in early recovery.
Right.
So yes, we do our best to, try to keep our participants safe, but they don't always listen to us, of course.
Yeah.
We know, the judge knows, we all know that they're going around and still having contact, even if we say no contact with
Right.
this individual. We want to see more sobriety, more stability before you have contact.
Right.
But one thing I always tell my drug court participants and my women is, like, really, in order for you to eventually get to a healthy relationship, which
Right.
you absolutely deserve,
Yes.
it all depends on your relationship with yourself,
Yeah.
which is what you are learning in
Work
early
on yourself
recovery.
first. Yep.
Because that is why codependency exists, because you are seeking to feel validated, to feel
You're putting
loved,
your self-worth
to feel,
on others.
yes, to feel valued, to feel loved by others.
Yeah. Right. To justify
right,
that you were.
because that you feel you're lacking in yourself, right?
Right.
So it's just like a drug.
Yep.
Probably more dangerous than a drug too, because it leads to the drugs.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like the low self-worth and everything. So if it's not the drugs or the alcohol, then it's the relationships, and that's why
Right.
codependency and addiction go hand in hand. But
Yeah.
I like have to stress doing the internal work that
Yeah.
a lot of the treatment agencies have them like learn, and the curriculum teaches them, like, going inward obviously processing their trauma, but really, really solidifying and learning what it means to have a positive relationship
Yeah.
with themselves. What does it mean to really love yourself?
Right.
Because your relationship with yourself is a direct reflection of your relationship with anyone else.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right,
So
right.
as
Who
you
you're gonna attract.
evolve, yes, as you evolved, as you learn to love yourself more and see yourself in a better light, to really appreciate yourself and know that you are a badass no matter what, you know what you want, and you have really grown this appreciation from yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to attract someone that feels that same way about themselves, because
Right.
you're a direct
And
reflection.
can give you exactly what you deserve,
Yes.
and, right, and to reciprocate.
So early recovery is all about learning who you are,
Yes.
and learning how to love yourself,
Yeah.
which leads to learning how to forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is.
Yeah. I feel like people, you're going to do what you want to do, right? At the end of the day, I think that kind of like is what happened to us in the beginning. People said, no, no, no. And you're like, all right, if you, I'm going to figure it out on my own.
I know.
If you got to
and
figure
then we got to walk through the storm with them.
Right. So all I would say is I would hope that if you don't shut down, if someone's trying to give you redirection, understand that it's not coming from a place of like telling you like they know best. It's more so just a supportive, because every story isn't the same, right? A relationship might work out. I've seen people who have done it together.
Correct.
Right? It's not 100% thing, but you are walking a line that's a high risk situation. Understand that, know that, accept that, as well as accept the feedback that's being given to you.
Absolutely.
Right?
And, it's not to say that I don't, it's not a probation violation for people to get in a relationship. Absolutely not. So if they are in a really positive, supportive, sober relationship, we're absolutely going to support that.
Yeah.
But I just want them to have a plan in place. I make sure to ingrain, teach them, coach them, guide them. Okay, and in the future, 2 years, 3 years from now, maybe you guys grow apart. What are you going to do if this does not work out? You have to be secure within yourself enough to know that if something doesn't work out and you guys break up, okay, now your whole life is going to change. Are you going to be okay on your own?
Yeah.
Are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to get triggered? How can you continue to do the internal work to find your security within yourself and not that other person?
Right.
Because that security has to come within you, and then obviously community and everything else, but really finding that security and self-love within yourself, so if something does happen, you'll be okay and you won't relapse.
Yeah. I'll share my story real quick on how I went through drug court. And so the person I was with got approved. They even said, you can go visit them. I went and did that. For whatever reason, the relationship didn't work out. I really appreciated the feedback you gave me at one point. You're like, every relationship has a time under the sun. Sometimes you're off on different frequencies,
Right.
And I don't know why, but that really sunk with me. And at the time, if you don't remember, I was telling you like, I really feel like I'm struggling right now.
Yes.
So I latched on to getting myself out to these things,
Right.
I mean,
to the meetings.
And it was the only time, and I was really skating through my recovery thinking like, I got this,
Right.
And I for sure got triggered when that was gone, because I started isolating. I started, my self-worth started going down. And so since then, my focus has been, because one of the things I was really disappointed in myself in is like, I actually saw myself getting like not away from my daughter. Like I was like, I don't want to, I was like, go stay with Nana,
starting to lose yourself in the relationship because it took so much attention.
Right.
Yes.
And so I was like, what am I doing? This whole journey through DCS, it was to make sure to be a father, be present, And so it just really rang a bell inside me, and I just really started focusing on, I need to work on myself.
Yes.
I need to work on loving myself. Now, am I there yet? No, but I feel like I'm worlds away from where I was back then.
I think we're all working towards that.
That's all you can do.
Yeah.
That's all you can do. But I do know, to close with your endpoint, I do know that I'm working to a point where I will attract the person that deserves me and is going to be able to reciprocate the same thing back.
Good.
And I want people to understand, if your mindset, because mindsets are powerful. We talk about this all the time, right?
Yes, it is. Everything is your mindset. Your reality is a reflection of your mindset.
So here's a good scenario. You're in the depths of your addiction. You're homeless. You're walking into a store. You can feel everybody looking at you, right? It's because you're projecting this energy.
Yeah,
right?
because you're afraid of it. You're paranoid.
Right. You're projecting this energy. Right. So if you're having that, if you don't have good self-worth and you're projecting that energy, who are you really going to attract? Mm-hmm. What quality person are you? Is it going to be someone that really deserves you, or is it going to be someone that's going to set you up for, I don't know, possibly using you, possibly in a,
manipulating, lying,
abusive, all that stuff, right? So take the time, because at the end of the day, I do believe that everybody wants love, everybody wants support, everybody wants, to come home to someone. But make sure you're investing your time in yourself, and it'll pay off. I truly wholeheartedly believe in that.
And he is a good example of this. Thank you, Anthony.
All right.
So you want to end with our
You sure?
Okay. Awesome.
All right. So thus concludes our second episode of Ambassador Recovery Radio. I want to remind you guys that you deserve nothing but the best, and continue, and never give up.
And I want to remind you, especially if you suffer from substance use disorder, that we see you, we hear you, and we are here for you.
Nancy, come do the verse.
Yeah, Nancy. Yay! Good job.
Yes.
Thank you guys. You guys are amazing.
Thank you for watching Ambassadors of Recovery Radio.